From the studios of EWTN, this is Open Line. With today's host, Father Mitch Pacwa. In North America, call toll-free 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. You can also text the letters EWTN to 55000 or send an email to openline@EWTN.com.
Well, good afternoon. I am flying this ship solo. So let's do what we can so it doesn't crash and burn. It's great to be with you all. Happy New Year to you. For those who have, been traveling and such. And we are just ready to start dealing with your questions and comments as we begin this new year of 2020 and new decade. See? Oh, boy. So far, I've gone through 7 of those. And again, the phone number here is 833-288-EWTN, which is spelling out 833-288-3986. If you are outside North America, dial country code 1, area code 205-271-2985. We'll try to push you right up to the front and have a good time doing it. So here we sort of get going and figure out what we got. Let's start off with some of your emails. This is from Crystal. Hello, Father Mitch. I am hoping you can lead me in the right direction on what to say when speaking of the weather or when someone else speaks of the weather using or referencing, quote, Mother Nature, unquote, as being in control or knowing what she is doing. Whenever I hear people referring to the weather as Mother Nature, especially since the Pachamama episode, I question if this is a proper reference for a Catholic to use. Would it not be would it not be that God knows what he is doing rather than Mother Nature? Thank you, Crystal. Well, I'm going to go with God knows what he's doing. And the other factor, too, is the forces of nature are not particularly personalized. Now, one of the things you could say in this politically correct world is say, oh, calling this Mother Nature is so sexist. And what about Father Nature? Let's blame the masculine for some of this bad weather, too. Makes about as much sense. And so I would just say, instead of personifying nature with a personality it does not have, unlike the margarine commercial many years ago, some of you old-timers might recall a commercial for one of the margarine companies where Mother Nature is standing there and she puts some of this margarine and she thinks it's good. And then they say, that's not butter, it's margarine. And thunderbolts crackle because it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. That's also nonsensical. So eat margarine if you want. I don't care, but butter's better. All right. Dear Father Mitch, please clarify about the language terms in Luke 14:12-14 for brother and sister, especially relative, and how they compare to other New Testament references to Jesus' brothers and sisters, plus the Old Testament reference to Abraham and Lot as brothers, since the latter two respectively mean relatives or cousins and uncle, nephew, terms not available in Old Testament language. Hope the question is clear enough. Well, let's try to get it a little bit more clear if I can. So if we go to Luke, and that is Luke 14, and it is verse 12. All right? So in Luke 14:12, we read, he said to the man who had invited him, when you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your kinsmen or rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return, and you be repaid. Now, in that case, it may well be your actual brothers, but the term in the Old Testament is vague. That's why I'm not so sure exactly what you mean. You're absolutely correct that in Aramaic and Hebrew, I don't know of any word for cousin. You do these circumlocutions where you say, this is the son of my father's sister. And in fact, they do have different terms for your father's sister versus your mother's sister, your father's brother and your mother's brother. They distinguish that because uncles are very important, probably for legal purposes, but cousins not so much. Whereas when Jesus speaks about his brother, well, not Jesus so much as the evangelists speak about Jesus' brothers and sisters, we see that he is making reference to, and they names them, James and Joses, in Mark chapter 6, verse 3, for instance. But then, later on, we find out that James and Joses are the sons of a woman named Mary and her husband Clopas. So that's a different Mary than the Blessed Virgin Mary. And according to what the later tradition says, Clopas was St. Joseph's brother. So he would have been Our Lady's brother-in-law. And that the text calls his wife Mary Our Lady's sister, but in the sense of being a sister-in-law. Because I don't know that there's a word for sister-in-law. There might be. I just don't know it. In a lot of languages there is, but I don't remember one in Hebrew or Aramaic. And I don't recall one for Greek. I just don't think so. And so you've got Jesus' brothers are the children of his uncle and aunt, therefore his cousins. And so the words get used, and then with in Genesis, I think chapter 13, it says Lot and his men are about to fight with Abraham and his men, so they split. And they say, why should we fight? Are we not brothers? Well, actually, Lot was the son of Abram's brother, therefore his nephew. But they don't have that word either. So this is the word that they use. Just say he's my brother. So that's, the kind of thing that is very, very helpful. And that's good. And that's it's from E. Murray, who hopes he doesn't miss, and I hope you don't either. All right, let's see. All right, now, if it's from Anne. If we come from Adam and Eve, then where did the primitive man fit into things and the dinosaurs? Thank you for reading this. Well, the dinosaurs are 150 million years earlier than Homo sapiens. Now, what you do see in Genesis chapter 1, that early in creation, God made, that they'll say that in English, the English translations will read sea monsters, but it's not, the word sea isn't there, it's just the monsters. And they're probably talking about those, the Tananim are the dinosaurs. And so they're there. But also the early Homo sapiens is, all from Adam and Eve. In fact, they've been doing the work on the DNA to trace all of Homo sapiens back to one woman. A change in her mitochondrial DNA is a change that all of us have. That's where that change started, and she didn't have those kids by herself. So that's something that we have. Now, we'll get to some more questions, and again, we want you to call in. It's 833-288-3986, or outside North America, 205-271-2985. We'll be back with your phone calls.
A young man from Austria claims responsibility for taking controversial statues from a church near the Vatican and throwing them into the Tiber River.
A suspect has been arrested in the massacre of 9 family members from a Mormon community on the Mexican side of the border with the United States.
Pope Francis tells members of the Jesuit order to focus on justice for everyone, especially the hungry and disadvantaged.
News headlines you can have faith in. Weekdays at the top of the hour on EWTN Radio.
60 Seconds with Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen.
Turn over the pages of sacred scripture. What do you find? You find a record of men to whom God has spoken. And you'll also find a record of men who listened to him. In other words, scripture is fulfilled in concrete, living dialogues. Now, men do not always want that dialogue with God. At one time, they desire it. At another time, they fear it. Adam was afraid when God called him in the garden. Cain was afraid when God spoke to him. Moses was afraid before the burning bush. When you and I have a dialogue with God, what makes it up? One thing that makes it up is, first of all, a consciousness of our own sin. And the other is the voice of God urging us to confess it, to seek his mercy.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question, call 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. Or send us an email to openline@EWTN.com.
All right, we are back and we are ready to take a phone call. Let us start off with Jody in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. Is that correct?
That is correct, Father Mitch.
What happened to the new one?
I don't know.
Oh, well, I want to report. Anyway, what can we do for you today, Jody?
Well, first of all, praise God for your ministry and for EWTN. And I have a question. I have a 15-year-old son, and he's getting to that age where he's, questioning everything about his faith and making comments and this and that. He's actually going to an all-boys Catholic school right now. But anyway, he said to me, Mom, how could God be so merciful if he did what he did? He killed all those people at Sodom and Gomorrah and killed all those people with Noah's Ark. And, I tried to explain to him a little bit about, God is the author of life. And, but I was wondering if you could maybe give me an easier answer for him that he could maybe get on to, that what he would understand.
He's looking to the issue of, God's fairness, right? Is God fair to people? Which is a very big concern for young people. And part of it is them learning how to deal with fairness. And in other words, giving a just judgment. Now, one of the questions is this. While he and you and I don't have the ability to know anybody else's innermost thoughts, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just part of limitations of being human. And we also did not create humanity, and we don't do the judging of humanity in terms of their eternal souls. We might make judgments on some of the behaviors they do, and we want to do that as fairly and righteously as possible, but we can only look at the external. Whereas in Sodom and Gomorrah, there were already large-scale reports of the people of Sodom who were unrighteous and that they had sinned a lot, right? And have him read. Don't have him just go by what he thinks. Have him start to read in Genesis chapter 18 and 19. And secondly, God sent angels to go and look for, 10 people to be righteous so that God could save the city. That's what he was looking to do, is try to save the city by finding enough righteous people that it's worth saving the city. And instead, he finds 4 people, and the rest of the people in town want to rape the 2 angels, and they even reject, and really Lot's not that great, because he offered his daughters, let's say, rape my daughters. And this is a nasty place, where a father offers his daughters to be raped instead of his guests. But the men say, no, we don't want them, at least at that point. We want these other 2 guys. And they try to rape. So for trying to commit this grave sin of raping strangers who were sent there to show them mercy, that's how he has to read this carefully. And then what would he think of that? If the 2 guys sent to show you mercy are then treated with trying to be raped by a mob, what would he think of that if he was sent to give mercy, to tell the town, look, just settle down, we're looking for a few rights so we can save your town, and they want to rape him? What would he think of that? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, it does. Yep.
And so you say, now what would you do if you then had the authority that instead of, when you try to offer mercy, they want to rape you? What would you do? How would you feel if somebody does? And try to put yourself into the place of those 2 angels. And then tell me if you think it's unfair. Okay. Does that make sense?
What about what about Noah's Ark?
Okay. Again, read the text. Go to Genesis chapter 6. And it talks there also that God found that people, and it's all sorts of some of the similar sexual misbehavior, and that everybody else's heart is unable to do good. That's how this is described. It's only Noah that's found righteous. Now, if you can imagine a situation in which everybody is found to be evil, what do? You can't find anybody good. And the only good guys you find, you save them. Whereas it's especially useful, perhaps, to read some of the pagan stories of the flood. No, the flood story is told all around the world. I don't know if you knew that. But the Babylonians have it. It's found in tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And why did the gods flood the earth to destroy the human race? Because they were mad at the goddess Ishtar You can't punish a goddess, but Ishtar loves human beings, so you punish her by killing off her favorite creatures, the humans. Now, in contrast, look at it. Why does God do it? And you should tell him to read these things. If he is going to be a superficial agnostic or atheist who does not do his homework and checks into actual texts, then the laziness of his mind deserves whatever happens to him at the final judgment. But if he is going to be careful and thoughtful, then have him do the research. You can get the Epic of Gilgamesh online for free. Download it, read it, and then read the biblical story. And tell me how you see the difference here. And reflect on how God judges and discerns between the righteous and the unrighteous in both of those cases. He may not like that, but that's what you have there. Does that help?
Yeah, huge. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Let us now go over to Margie in beautiful Racine, Wisconsin. Right there on the border of Illinois and Wisconsin. What you got there, Margie?
Hi, Father Mitch. Thank you again for your ministry. Wanted to ask, I'm thinking of taking a Tai Chi class because I broke my foot and I have no balance. It's really bad. So that was recommended to me. So I just wanted to see if there was any problems with that from the church's standpoint as a Catholic Christian.
Yeah. Here would be the thing. Tai Chi is apparently based on Taoist philosophy. If they are teaching you Taoist philosophy, which talks about balancing the two forces in the universe, the yin and the yang, positive and negative, okay? And that you have to get the negative energy in balance with the positive energy. And this is also the basis for acupuncture and a number of other things. If you are getting into that philosophy, then you will have problems with compromising your faith. If, on the other hand, you are pushing, you're doing exercise, and apparently it teaches a certain way of slow exercise that's graceful and seeks balance. In your case, you're looking for physical balance. Then take a look at that, okay? And you can. It's the problem gets to be when you move from the physical exercises to this non-Christian philosophy that would be in competition with your Christian faith. That's where it gets to be a problem. So check on that, and with the various teachers, because some people just teach the physical movements. Others include the Taoist philosophy, and that you would be strongly obliged to avoid. But the physical exercises, I don't think would be problematic. Does that help?
Oh, that helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Sure. Sure. All right. We got time for one more? Let's try. Let's go to Catherine. Catherine, how are you? You're from Idaho Falls?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you so much, Father, for taking my call.
Sure. And if we have to go into after the break, just hang on. So what is your question?
Okay. My question has to do with the scriptural references to the Rosary. And are the ancient texts pretty much the same as what we would get in the contemporary text?
Wait. Texts of what?
I'm talking about biblical.
Yeah, okay, so the Bible text, the ancient Bible text, the same as what we read today. Is that what you mean?
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw. I think you can go on YouTube and check it out. I did a special on the Vatican Library. I don't know if you saw that or not.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm going to write it down, though.
Yeah. It's a I don't know what they called it, but it's a documentary we did on the Vatican Library, and they showed me the oldest complete Bible from 325 and AD, and then I had another manuscript that they have there. It is Luke and John, and it's a copy written in 175 AD, 150 years earlier than that. And it is 94% in agreement. The differences sometimes are, instead of you singular, have you plural. I mean, it's tiny, tiny stuff that didn't change the meaning, but it's the same. So that music means I got to take a break. Hang on there, Catherine. Be right back with you.
Jimmy Aiken.
One of my greatest joys in life is the joy of discovery, especially discovering answers to the questions about God, about the world that He's made, and how we can find our way to Him.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
This is Mike and Alicia Hernan with the Messy Family Minute. It's vitally important for children to feel individually loved and known by their parents. Especially in a big family like ours, this can be very challenging. But no matter how many kids you have an obligation to work on your relationship with each individual child. Relationships are built with the material of time, and we need to give our time to our children in a very intentional way.
We do something with our kids that we call special time. Special time is spending time with one child doing something that they like to do. It can be very simple, like going to a park, the library, or going on a hike. Or you could go out for ice cream, a movie, or have some other fun experience.
It's really not important what you do. What is important is that you are focused on getting to know that individual child and sending them the message that they are important, they are loved, and they are known by you. This lays the foundation for their relationship with God.
For more inspiration and practical advice, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Don't you feel sometime like there's so many people in the world? How does He hear your prayer? Never think of that, huh? Everybody thinks of that. I'm only a little grain of sand on the seashore. Oh, but that's not true. See, God is God. And you and I have to let God be God. I don't know how He does it. He's God.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Tomorrow on More to Life, the life you were meant to live.
We'll look at how the theology of the body can help you live a more abundant life.
That's tomorrow on More to Life, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central on EWTN Radio.
Now, back to Open Line.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question, call 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. Or send us an email to openline@EWTN.com.
All right, again, that phone number is 833-288-EWTN or 833-288-3986. Outside North America, country code 1. Why? Because an American invented the telephone. So we had get the first area code. So area code 1, country code 1, area code 205-271-2985. So I think the Russians think they invented the phone. Oh, well. All right. So Catherine, so yes, the manuscripts, and if you don't know how to read Greek, do you?
Oh, no, Father, I do not.
Okay, I tell you what.
I struggle with Latin.
Okay, well, I bet you there's a little system you could learn how to read Greek. Okay, very easily and free. There's there's some of these free language apps you can put down in your phone. Duolingo is one of them, and they have, it's modern Greek, but you can learn what the letters are and how to read them. And they have very simple and very helpful little exercises to show you how to read that language. They do that for Hebrew, Arabic, Urdu, and all sorts of other languages. So you could even learn to read a little Greek. But in my Greek Bible, which I have in the other studio, actually, it has a little apparatus on the bottom of every page with any variation among any of the manuscripts. There are about 3,000 ancient manuscripts of the New Testament. And it shows all the variations. And really, Catherine, there are not many. So it's the New Testament is quite reliable.
That's good to know, Father.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the things we studied in grad school.
Question.
Yeah.
My other question about the Rosary has to do with basically its inception, because I've heard two versions. One version was that Our Lady gave it to St. Dominic. Mm-hmm. The other that I had heard was that the monks of that day basically recited all 150 psalms, and this was the laity's intent to pray to our Lord, but it was Our Lady's Psalter. And if you could straighten that out for me,
okay.
I'd love it.
Actually, there are, I might just confuse you more, because there were two kind of rosaries. There was one that was 150 Our Fathers. Another was 150 Hail Marys, and both of those were doing exactly what you said. They were imitating the monks. Especially the Irish monks said the 150 psalms every day. And some of the other psalms would do the 150 psalms every week, Benedictines, for instance. And so the lay people wanted to join in. If they, literacy was really tough. Charlemagne tried to get universal literacy in his empire. But, the empire collapsed with war, and in wartime, an invasion by the Vikings, the Saracens, the Magyars, and other groups that kept running across Europe. By the way, that great show coming up tonight it's called The Battles Every Catholic Should Know About. And it'll be a good show. But you can see it in that kind of war situation, learning to read was not your first priority. Staying hidden and having food to eat when you are hidden is your top priority. And so people didn't know how to read and write. And they did use this before St. Dominic received his vision. Our Lady gave him a vision that made the Rosary more specifically what it is today, which is a combination of those two. That's why we have the Our Father in between the Hail Marys. We take the Our Father Rosary and combine it with the Hail Mary Rosary in the present form, and then the role of the mysteries and the praying it with her for her intercession is what Saint Dominic developed further. So it didn't come right out of nothing to St. Dominic. It already existed, and then Our Lady specified it more. And then it still took, because Dominic lived in the 1200s, it wasn't until the 1400s that the first 15 decades were finally resolved upon. People tried different other mysteries of the Rosary. And then finally they came up with the 15 that we traditionally had. But they didn't do that until the 1400s. So it took a while to develop. Does that help?
That's terrific. That's terrific to know the back, Father. I appreciate that so much.
You're welcome. And what you may want to do is get a hold of a little book called A Scriptural Rosary. And they give a little bit of the history there. Also, the Catholic Encyclopedia, you can check with them and learn more about it there. All right?
Fantastic, Father.
You're welcome. Let me give again those numbers. It's 833-288-EWTN or 833-288-3986. Outside North America, it's 1-205-271-2985. We are ready to now go to Deacon Lauren from Williston, North Dakota. Deacon, how are you?
Good, Father Mitch. How are you?
Fine. How cold is it up there?
Actually, it's not too bad. It's 22 degrees right now.
Well, just to point out, I walked to the studio in my shirt sleeves under a absolutely cloudless blue sky. So I think it's nice in most of the country today.
Well, good.
Yeah. So what can we do for you?
My question has to do with the redemption of the firstborn in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know in Numbers, I believe that's where God said instead of taking the firstborn, he would take the Levites.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Numbers 18, he says, but you'll redeem the firstborn for 5 shekels. Now, my question comes with the presentation of Jesus. My understanding, the 2 turtle doves that were given were for the purification rite, not for the redemption.
Mm-hmm.
So since Jesus was for the service of the Lord, did he not have to be redeemed for those 5 shekels?
And, okay, a couple things. Where exactly was the verse in Numbers 18?
Oh, I don't recall exactly where. I was looking at it on some commentaries last night, and I don't have that. I'm driving. Well, I pulled over.
Yeah. Don't look at it while you're driving. We don't want you to get in any difficulties there. I know the roads are not always that full in parts of North Dakota, but still, we don't want you to get hurt.
I believe it was in Numbers 12 where he said that he would trade off the firstborn for the Levites, but then it was in Numbers 18 where he said the firstborn will then be redeemed. I think it was like verse 15 or around there.
Okay. All right, yeah, here it is. Every devoted... Wait, where is that? Yeah, here we go. Every devoted thing in Israel shall be yours. Everything that opens the womb of all flesh, whether man or beast, which they offer... This thing is jumping around. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Everything which opens the womb of all flesh, whether man or beast, which they offer to the Lord, shall be yours. Nevertheless, the firstborn of man you shall redeem, and the firstling of unclean beast you shall redeem. And their redemption price at a month old you shall redeem them. You shall fix at 5 shekels in silver, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, which 20 gerahs. But the firstling of a cow, firstling of a sheep, or of a goat, you shall not redeem, for they are holy. Shall sprinkle their blood on the altar and burn their fat. Their flesh shall be yours. As the breast that is waved, as the right thigh are yours. So here, now one of the things about the writing down of some of these laws, they had been passed on orally, and the writing stage for Numbers is probably post-exilic. Now this is not for sure. There's a variety of opinions on this, but a lot of folks think that these laws are ancient, but they're written down later. And in the writing, there were some adaptations, because in Exodus, where the law of the firstborn is mentioned, it's mentioned because the Egyptians lost their firstborn sons, and therefore you must dedicate your firstborn sons as in replacement of theirs. But you don't kill your children. You can sacrifice the clean animals among you, or you can redeem the unclean, like horses and donkeys. Specifically mention donkeys and such. You can't sacrifice them, but you can redeem them by sacrificing a lamb. And then the clean animals you can sacrifice. You have to sacrifice them. But human beings, you may not. And they mention that the lamb is the normal gift, but if you're poor, you can offer the turtle doves. And here, they are using money, and that indicates in part that this is written at a later time. The law goes back, but the actual writing down seems to be post-exilic, when the use of coinage was introduced. Coins weren't used before. They, what's his name? King Midas is one of the people that introduced the use of coins as minted by the state, by the king. And the Israelites began to do that as well. And that's why even the phrase that, about how many gerahs it's worth, you don't see gerah even mentioned in pre-exilic texts, as far as I know. That this is a later term, and it indicates the lateness of the passage. So that, I think that's some of what's going on here, is that these are the adaptations to the urbanized post-exilic situation from the ancient law that just had to kill a couple doves or a lamb. Does that help?
Well, it does, except I thought the lamb was part of the price for the purification, again, because that was in Leviticus.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Purification after childbirth.
Yeah, in that's, again, that also becomes part of that change, because in Exodus, which is mostly where I did a lot of my work, I haven't done enough of that work on the ritual laws and their development. I think that's a little bit later. Again, that's also part of this post-exilic writing period. That, as a matter of fact, they even use the rabbis mention that this writing down during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, especially Ezra the priest. And so there seems to be this writing down of the how they remember the traditions. Not at all unlike the Mishnah. Mishnah is a writing down of the customs from the temple, but it's written, a lot of it is written down in the years after the temple was already destroyed, because before the priests who knew how to do the ceremonies died off, they wanted to have these memories written down to preserve what had just been the oral tradition. That's for a still later period after 70 AD. And here you have these adaptations, and I just have not paid much attention to the lamb sacrifice and the purification. So I'll have to do some more work on that. If you're interested, you may want to take a look for Roland DeVaux. I believe it's Vaux. I believe he's Belgian. He's passed away now. But his book, The Institutions of Ancient Israel, that will be a good place to check into it as a source. He did a lot of this work, and he might know more. Does that help?
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I just haven't. I didn't do much. I did my work on the Old Testament prophets, and I never had a course in this liturgical legal material. So I've picked up some along the way, but it's actually fairly specialized area, and I just need to, if there's ever time, I'll try to do more of that. All right, we have another caller, and this is Clemente from the great city of San Antonio, Texas. Clemente, what can we do?
Well, good afternoon, Father. It's 71 degrees, partly cloudy here, so maybe it's a little bit better.
Well, you're
Father, thank you for taking
you're a few degrees of latitude south of us, so it might be a little bit warm. But it's shirt sleeve weather here. It's close to 70 if it isn't 70. So what do we have for
that's
you?
Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking my call, Father. This is 3 or 4 calls ago, and I apologize in advance because I didn't catch the full conversation as I just tuned in. But going back, talking about the Genesis where the angels were going to be raped.
Right.
My understanding... Go ahead.
Go ahead.
My understanding overall has been that angels don't have bodies or even a sexuality.
Right.
So what did I miss there, Father? Can you please
Sure. They took the shape of human beings, and they came as messengers to investigate Sodom and Gomorrah. And in fact, when the men of the town saw them and wanted to rape them, their angelic power came to the foreground as they blinded these guys. They lost their sight, so they couldn't see what they were doing. But they took on a human shape. You see that a number of other times. Why? Why would God do that? Because it is too difficult for human beings to comprehend, yet alone perceive, a pure spirit. So they're allowed to have these human shapes a number of times, and these are among them. And when they see those human shapes, they fall madly in lust and try to rape them. But it's not that they have bodies, but they took a form that looked like a body, and you see a few other times in the Bible they do that. Does that help?
Okay. It helps, clears everything up. Thank you, Father, for
You're welcome. You're welcome. You know, they had the angels, as a matter of fact, St. Thomas Aquinas talks about how each angel is its own unique species, that they, don't have, just a general class. Like we're human beings, and we share in common with other human beings, but each angel is a pure spirit and is its own species. They're purely spiritual beings, but apparently they can take on these human shapes, and they do so in order to minister to people as it is. The angels tend to scare people enough. If they appeared just as they were, well, first of all, they couldn't appear because we have eyes, and we need to see things or touch them or smell them. We need our senses. That's part of being embodied spirits. But the angels couldn't be perceived at all unless they had some sort of human shape to them. Okay? And
Father, we have a text message that's come in from Lee. He writes, If Jesus is really present in the Eucharist, why does he say, "Do this in remembrance of me"? This language suggests that it's a memorial to someone who is gone.
Now this is where it's also very helpful to know more of the Old Testament, especially in Hebrew, because we see, for instance, in the Old Testament, there are a couple of words used for offering a sacrifice. One is zavach. Zavach means to sacrifice, but also means to slay an animal. And because that's what you have to do, you sacrifice them and slay them. But not all sacrifices were animal sacrifices. And so they use the verb asa, to do. And then when you see that's one use of it, and that use is frequent in the book of Leviticus. And it also even occurs in Exodus with the Passover lamb. Now, and then the other word, remembrance, there are 10 uses of that word in the Old Testament and in the Bible. 3 of them are for the Eucharist. Do this in remembrance of me. The others are used in the Old Testament to refer to a class of sacrifice. So you may be a little bit more familiar. This is one area of the liturgical laws I did study because I was interested in the Eucharist aspect of it, that you have sin offerings, guilt offerings, peace offerings, etc. But one of those classifications mentioned in Leviticus 5 is the remembrance offerings. So when it says, do this in remembrance of me, it would be understood by a Jewish reader who knows the Old Testament as sacrifice this as a memorial sacrifice. Not, when you do this, think about me. That would have been expressed in a different way. But this is what's going on here. So he is actually commanding this to be a sacrifice, not just a recollection. In fact, of those 10 uses, only one use of the word anamnesis in Greek is used in the Book of Wisdom, chapter 16, meaning to recall the past events. That's the only time it is. That's a very late text, too, by the way. It's 1st century BC. Otherwise, they are using it to mean a sacrifice. What I'm going to recommend to this gentleman and anybody else interested in finding more about this, get a hold of my book called The Eucharist, A Bible Study for Catholics. I lay out all those passages where that's all the case. All right. And then we have another caller. All right. Let's go to Lee in Sugar Land, Texas. Lee?
Yes, sir.
What can we do for you today?
Well, I was listening about how angels from time to time are allowed to take on human form.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, when the angel Gabriel appeared to the Blessed Mother to tell her that she was going to conceive a son, was he in that human form or was he pure spirit?
You know, there is no way for me to answer that because the text leaves that unstated, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. And apparently, this was not a concern of Our Lady in passing on this to her. See, the only way we can know that is ultimately through her. She's the only witness to this that would be able to pass it on to the disciple. And something very interestingly is that in those first 2 chapters of Luke, it's very Aramaic style of speaking and writing. It comes from an Aramaic original that Luke translated. And she just didn't think that was important to say. There's a lot of reticence about certain things. That's why you see in the end of the Gospels, none of them describe the actual moment of the resurrection. They just didn't think that was important. So we don't know. And I'm going to stay with my ignorance. And until then, Lord bless you all, keep you, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.